Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a case that's both, well, a chilling mystery and a really fascinating snapshot of a bygone era. The story of Dr. Hawley Harvey Crippen.
Ah, Dr. Crippen. Yeah, a name that still gives true crime fans a bit of a shiver. For good reason.
Absolutely. Crippen was an American homeopath living right here in London, turn of the 20th century.
Right.
And at the heart of our exploration today is his conviction for murdering his second wife, Cora Henrietta Crippen. She performed as Belle Elmore.
The music hall singer, yeah. It's a case with so many layers, and it's amazing how questions still hang over it, even now.
It really is. And what's fascinating right from the start, it's not just about the crime itself.
No, it's much more. It's a kind of technological landmark, too, isn't it?
It truly is. Crippen holds this, well, dubious distinction.
Yeah.
He was the very first criminal caught, partly because of wireless telegraphy.
Just think about that.
Well,
Brand new technology, basically.
exactly, playing this crucial role in catching a suspect across the Atlantic Ocean. That's a key thread we'll definitely be pulling on how this case sits right at that intersection of, say, Victorian England and the dawn of the modern connected age.
Yeah, it puts the whole story at this unique crossroads, doesn't it? Old world crime meets new tech. For this deep dive, we've looked at quite a lot of material accounts of his life, Cora's disappearance, the investigation twists.
Oh, yeah, the twists.
The huge trial, and of course those persistent questions about whether he actually did it.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to really unpack the key events, look closely at the evidence, and maybe uncover some of the surprising parts of this case.
Yeah, try and understand why this story from so long ago still fascinates us.
Okay, so let's start, at the beginning. Who was Hawley Harvey Crippen before all this blew up?
Well, he was born way back in 1862, Coldwater, Michigan. Interestingly, he was the only surviving child of his parents.
Oh.
He studied homeopathy first University of Michigan, then graduated from Cleveland Homeopathic Medical College in '84.
Homeopathy. That was quite a thing back then, wasn't it?
Oh yes, a very popular system of medicine, using highly diluted stuff to treat illnesses.
So, a qualified homeopath. But his personal life had some, well, early sadness.
It did. His first wife, Charlotte Jane, she died pretty young, in 1892 from a stroke, apparently.
Oh, wow.
They had a son, Holly Otto, and after Charlotte died, Crippen sent the boy off to California to live with his own parents.
Okay. Then came wife number 2, Corrine Turner, in 1894.
Exactly. Corrine, Cora Turner, the music hall singer, Belle Elmore. That same year, 1894, Crippen started working for a well-known homeopath, James M. Munyon.
Right.
And that job is what eventually brought him and Cora over here to London in 1897. He was managing Munyon's London office.
But his American qualifications, they didn't quite cut it over here, did they, for practicing as a full doctor?
No, that's right. So he couldn't practice as a doctor in the UK. He kept working in the field, but more distributing patent medicines, that kind of thing.
Okay. And Cora, her stage career.
By most accounts, not exactly setting the world on fire. She did get involved in the social scene, though, with other variety performers.
And Crippen's job situation wasn't entirely stable either.
No. He got sacked by Munyon in 1899, worked for some other patent medicine companies after that. Eventually, he landed a job as manager of the Drouet Institute for the Deaf.
Ah, and that's where?
That's where, in 1900, he hired a young typist named Ethel Leneve.
Ethel Leneve. Okay, a name to remember.
Absolutely central. Because by 1905, Crippen and Ethel were having an affair.
So things at home were getting complicated.
Very. They moved to 39 Hilldrop Crescent in Holloway, took in lodgers to help with money.
Rolling out rooms, yeah.
And then, adding another layer, Cora herself had an affair with one of the lodgers.
Oh, really?
Yes. And by 1908, Crippen wasn't really hiding his relationship with Ethel Leneve anymore. She was essentially his mistress.
So a pretty tangled domestic situation leading into 1910.
Exactly. The stage was definitely set for, well, everything that followed.
Which all kicked off with Cora just disappearing.
Vanishing. January 31st, 1910, right after a party they'd hosted at Hilldrop Crescent.
And Crippen's initial story was?
First, he said she'd just gone back to the U.S. Simple as that.
Okay.
But then the story changed. He started saying she'd actually died over in California and had been cremated there.
Changing stories. That's never a good sign, is it?
Not usually, no. It's one of the first big red flags.
And then Ethel and Neve moves into the house and starts wearing Cora's clothes and jewelry.
Yes, openly. That must have set tongues wagging, you can imagine.
Oh, I bet. Who alerted the police initially?
It was actually a friend of Cora's, a strong woman named Kate Volcano Williams.
A strong woman. Wow.
Yeah. But the police didn't seem to take it too seriously at first. It was only after another actress, Lil Hawthorne, and her husband, John Nash, used their connections they knew Superintendent Frosis at Scotland Yard that things really started moving.
So pressure from influential friends got the ball rolling.
Seems like it. The police did an initial search of the house, Hilldrop Crescent, but didn't find anything suspicious.
Nothing at first.
No. But then Chief Inspector Walter Dew, he's sort of the lead detective here, he questioned Crippen.
And Crippen's story started to unravel.
Under questioning, yes. He admitted he'd made up the story about Cora dying in California, said it was just to avoid embarrassment because she'd actually left him for another man.
Ooh.
A music hall actor named Bruce Miller, supposedly in the U.S.
Right. And Dew, he accepted this.
Apparently, yes. Dew seemed, well, provisionally satisfied with that explanation at the time, which is kind of amazing looking back.
But Crippen and Leneve obviously didn't feel safe with that story holding up.
Clearly not, because almost immediately after Dew's visit, they panicked. They fled.
Where did they go?
First to Brussels, spent a night, then on to Antwerp. And in Antwerp, they boarded a ship, the SS Montrose, heading for Canada.
Wow. That sudden flight, that must have screamed guilt to the police.
Oh, absolutely. Their running off prompted Dew to order more searches of the house, much more thorough this time.
So the first search found nothing, but their disappearing act changed everything.
Exactly. And it was during the fourth search.
The fourth one.
Yes, the fourth search of Hilldrop Crescent that the police made the gruesome discovery.
What did they find?
Under the brick floor in the basement cellar, they found a human torso.
Oh my God. Just the torso.
Just the torso. No head, no limbs, no skeleton.
And the forensic analysis.
That was done by William Wilcox. He later became Sir William Wilcox. He found traces of hyoscine hydrobromide,
Which is?
also known as scopolamine, a pretty potent poison.
A poison found in the remains. That's huge. How did they identify it as Cora with just a torso?
Well, this is crucial. The identification was mainly based on a piece of skin from the abdomen.
A piece of skin.
Yes. This piece of skin apparently showed evidence of a scar, and Cora was known to have had an abdominal operation, leaving a scar.
So they matched the scar tissue.
That was the claim, yes, based on that scar tissue. The remains were later buried in St. Pancras and Islington Cemetery.
Okay, so they have remains identified supposedly as Cora with poison detected. Meanwhile, Crippen and Leneve are on a ship to Canada.
Right, and this is where that amazing technological element comes in, the transatlantic arrest.
Like a wireless telegraphy.
Exactly. The captain of the SS Montrose, a man named Henry George Kendall, he started getting suspicious about two of his passengers.
Crippen and Leneve?
Yes. He recognized Crippen, and Leneve was disguised rather poorly, it seems, as a boy.
Disguised as a boy.
Trying to lay low. So Captain Kendall, just before his ship sailed out of range of the coastal transmitters, used his Marconi wireless set.
Incredible. What did he send?
He sent a telegram back to the British authorities. Basically said, have strong suspicions that Crippen, London cellar murderer and accomplice are amongst saloon passengers, and gave their descriptions.
Wow. A captain at sea using this newfangled gadget to alert the police back home. That must have caused a sensation.
Oh, huge news. It was absolutely groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Demonstrated the power of this new tech for law enforcement like nothing before.
So what did the police do? Scotland Yard.
Chief Inspector Dew didn't waste any time. He got himself onto a faster ship, the SS Laurentic.
A faster ship to race Crippen.
Exactly. To get to Canada before the Montrose arrived. And he did. He reached Quebec first.
So he was waiting for them?
He was. And when the Montrose sailed up the St. Lawrence River towards Quebec City, Dew arranged to board the ship, disguised as one of the local river pilots.
The theater there from Dew.
A clever move. Captain Kendall then brought Crippen up on deck, supposedly to meet the pilots. Dew took off his pilot's cap, revealed himself, and Crippen apparently just crumpled.
What did he say?
The famous quote is, "Thank God it's over. The suspense has been too great. I couldn't stand it any longer." He supposedly even held out his wrist for the handcuffs.
Wow. Sounds like a confession almost.
It certainly sounds like immense relief, at the very least. They were arrested right there, July 31st, 1910. Crippen was then brought back to the UK on another ship, the SS Megantic, to face trial.
Which brings us to the Old Bailey. Must have been the trial of the century or close to it.
Absolutely massive public interest. It started October 18th, 1910. Lord Chief Justice Lord Alverstone presiding. Lasted 4 days.
And the prosecution's case rested heavily on
The forensics, primarily. Pathologist Bernard Spilsbury, a name that becomes huge in forensic history, partly because of this case, he testified.
What were his key points?
Finding the scopolamine, the poison, in the torso, and crucially, that piece of abdominal skin with the scar, which he testified was consistent with Cora's known surgical history.
The scar again?
Yes. And they also showed evidence that Crippen had bought a significant quantity of scopolamine before Cora disappeared.
Okay, that looks bad. What was the defense strategy?
His lawyer, Alfred Tobin, argued, well, firstly, that Cora really had just run off to America with Bruce Miller, the actor.
Sticking to that story.
And secondly, they emphasized that the Crippens had only lived at Hilldrop Crescent since 1905. So they argued maybe the body was already there, put there by someone else before they moved in.
Interesting angle. Did they challenge the scar identification directly?
Oh, yes, strongly. They argued the tissue sample wasn't scar tissue at all. Why? Because it had hair follicles in it.
Hair follicles. Scar tissue doesn't have those.
Generally, no. That was their point. They suggested it was just folded skin, not a surgical scar.
But Spilsbury had an answer for that.
He did. He testified that while there seemed to be sebaceous glands related to hair follicles at the ends of the sample, they weren't present in the middle part, which he claimed was consistent with scar tissue. A very technical argument.
It sounds like a real battle of the experts. Did the prosecution have anything else?
They did. They presented a fragment of a man's pajama top found with the remains.
Pajamas?
Yes. Specifically, the label was from Jones Bros, a department store. And testimony established that particular type of label wasn't used on pajamas sold before 1908.
So placing it firmly within the time the Crippens lived there.
Exactly. Making it highly likely they belonged to Crippen. Plus, they found hair curlers and bleached hair, also consistent with Cora's appearance, buried with the torso.
So quite a lot of circumstantial evidence pointing towards him. How did Crippen himself come across during the trial?
Reports suggest he didn't show much remorse about Cora. Seemed more worried about Ethel Lenev's reputation, how all this was affecting her.
Interesting focus. And the jury.
They didn't take long. Deliberated for just 27 minutes.
27 minutes. That's incredibly fast for a murder trial.
Astonishingly fast. They came back with a guilty verdict for murder.
And Ethel Lenev.
She was tried separately, right after, for being an accessory after the fact. But she was acquitted. The jury found her not guilty.
So Crippen convicted, Lenev walks free, case closed. Seems not, given we're still talking about it.
Far from closed in many people's minds. Doubts and alternative theories started swirling almost immediately, and they've never really gone away.
Like what? What were some early doubts?
Well, even a famous barrister of the time, Edward Marshall Hall, he floated the idea it might have been an accident.
Your accident.
Yeah, maybe Crippen gave Cora an overdose of scopolamine by mistake, perhaps using it as a sedative, or some speculated an anti-aphrodisiac, and then panicked and, disposed of the body horribly.
Plausible, maybe. What else?
Much later, there was a claim by Sir Hugh Rice Rankin. He said Ethel Lenev confessed to him years later in Australia that Crippen did kill Cora, but because she had syphilis.
Syphilis? That's a new motive. Any proof?
Just his claim, really. It adds another layer of rumor and speculation.
And even crime writers weighed in.
Oh, yeah. Raymond Chandler, the famous detective novelist, he was skeptical. He thought it was weird that Crippen would be clever enough to get rid of the head and limbs so effectively.
Right, they were never found.
But then be clumsy enough to bury the torso right there in his own basement. It seemed inconsistent to him.
That's a fair point, actually, the inconsistency.
There's also been a persistent theory maybe the torso wasn't Cora at all, but perhaps a patient of Crippen's who died during an illegal abortion he performed.
Ah, the back alley doctor angle.
It's another possibility people have raised over the years.
And then, much more recently, modern science stepped in and threw a massive spanner in the works, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really interesting for the modern day. In 2007, a forensic scientist, David Foran, at Michigan State University.
Okay.
He and his team got hold of one of the original microscope slides prepared by Spilsbury back in 1910, containing tissue from the torso.
100-year-old slide. You can get DNA from that.
Apparently, using sophisticated techniques, yes. They focused on mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down the maternal line.
Right, mother to child.
Exactly. So they tracked down living great-nieces of Cora Crippen relatives descended from her mother's side. They compared the mitochondrial DNA from the torso sample with the DNA from these living relatives.
And the result?
The result was stunning. The DNA profiles did not match.
Did not match. So the torso wasn't Cora.
According to this DNA evidence, no. It suggested the remains belonged to someone else entirely. A bombshell over a century later.
That completely undermines the entire prosecution case if that body wasn't Cora.
Precisely. The whole foundation, the identification based on that scar, suddenly looked incredibly shaky.
Did they do any other tests?
Yes, they also did Y chromosome testing on the sample.
Y chromosome, that indicates male.
It does. And allegedly, the testing indicated the presence of a Y chromosome, suggesting the flesh sample was actually male.
Male, not Cora at all, but a man.
That was the implication of the Y chromosome test results they reported. And they also revisited the scar evidence, arguing again that the presence of hair follicles meant it couldn't be a surgical scar. They published all this in the Journal of Forensic Sciences in 2010.
So Crippen innocent then? Case solved, just wrongly.
Well, it's not quite that simple. This new scientific evidence, while explosive, hasn't been universally accepted. There's been pushback.
From who? On what grounds?
People like the journalist David Aronovich, writing in the Times, questioned the reliability. He pointed out the DNA was extracted using a special technique from a very old, possibly degraded, less than optimal sample.
So, questioning the quality of the century-old evidence.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Was the DNA reliable? Could there be contamination? Ferran and his team have strongly defended their methods and findings, but it shows that even modern science isn't always clear-cut, especially with historical samples.
A real scientific debate, then.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Is there any other physical evidence that could be tested today?
Well, there's that blonde hair found in the curlers with the body. Those samples are apparently still preserved in the Metropolitan Police's Crime Museum, their Black Museum.
Could they test the DNA from the hair?
Researchers have asked repeatedly, but so far, the requests to test those hair samples have always been denied.
Why deny access, I wonder? Interesting. Any other lingering theories about the evidence?
There's been some speculation, though pretty controversial, about whether the police might have planted some evidence.
Planted evidence? Like the pajama fragment?
Possibly. The idea being that there was immense public pressure for a conviction. Maybe they felt they needed something more concrete. But the counter-argument is strong. The case only became a massive public sensation after the body was found, so the pressure wasn't really there before the discovery.
Right. The timeline doesn't quite fit that theory. It seems every single piece of this case is still debated. What's the official stance now? Have the courts looked at this new evidence?
The UK's Criminal Cases Review Commission, the CCRC, they did review the case back in 2009. They decided not to refer it to the Court of Appeal for a posthumous pardon. They weren't convinced by the new evidence, it seems, or didn't feel it met the threshold.
So officially, the conviction stands?
Officially, yes. Although James Patrick Crippen, who's thought to be his closest living male relative, has formally asked for a pardon and wants Crippen's remains repatriated.
And Crippen himself. Did he say anything before the end?
He maintained his innocence right to the gallows. In a letter to Ethel Leneve, just before he was executed, he wrote he was confident that facts would come out eventually to prove he didn't do it.
Haunting words. Given the DNA results now, what actually happened to them both?
Crippen was hanged at Pentonville Prison on November 23, 1910.
And Ethel Leneve, she was acquitted.
Yes. She left the country, emigrated first to the U.S., then Canada, worked as a typist. She did eventually return to Britain years later and died quietly in 1967.
Did she ever speak about it again?
Not publicly in any significant way, it seems. Kept a very low profile. One poignant detail. Crippen apparently requested that a photograph of Ethel be placed in his coffin with him.
Really? Wow.
And there's a tradition apparently that a rose bush is always maintained over his unmarked grave inside Pentonville prison walls.
Such strange, sad details woven into this whole story. Any other odd footnotes?
One slightly curious one comes from Dornford Yates, who became a famous novelist but was a junior barrister involved in the original trial. He wrote in his memoirs about something odd. The prosecution, with the judge's agreement, refused to give Crippen's defense team a copy of the sworn affidavit used to get the arrest warrant.
Why would they do that? That seems unfair.
Exactly. Yates claimed he knew why they did it, but he never revealed the reason. Very mysterious.
Bizarre.
Yates also noted Crippen's apparent mistake with the quicklime he used on the body, thinking it would destroy it, when actually, because it got lead, it acted more like a preservative. Yates even used that detail in one of his novels later.
Life imitating art, or art imitating life's grim details. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the enduring puzzle of Dr. Crippen, what are the main things that stick out?
Well, we've covered a crime that absolutely gripped the public, partly because of that amazing new technology, the wireless telegraphy used in the capture.
A world first.
Then there was the huge trial, built on forensic evidence The scar, the poison that now, thanks to modern DNA analysis, is seriously, seriously questioned.
Right. The core identification is challenged.
And that leaves us with the biggest question of all. Was the man hanged for this actually guilty? The doubt is significant now.
Yeah, the surprising facts really pile up, don't they? That incredible transatlantic chase, the disputed forensics, the basic question of whose body was in the cellar, it really makes you think. This case, over 100 years old, it just highlights how complex investigations can be.
And how even things that seemed certain, scientifically proven at the time, can be thrown into doubt later on.
It definitely shows the potential for uncertainty, even in seemingly closed cases.
Which really brings us to a final thought for you, listening. When you consider all this conflicting information, the old evidence versus the new science, the unanswered questions, what does the Crippen case really tell us about justice? About how reliable history is, especially when it leans so heavily on the science of the day?
Yeah, what part of this whole tangled story makes you question the accepted narrative the most? Is it the DNA, the chase, the motive, the trial itself?
It's a case that just keeps challenging our assumptions about truth and proof. And I suspect it will keep sparking debate for, well, probably another 100 years.